2019 film Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, directed by Quentin Tarantino, takes place in Los Angeles in 1969.
Fucking hippie motherfuckers.
To create an authentic and detailed interpretation of the sets and locations used in the film, production designer Barbara Ling, who had previously worked on Oliver Stone's The Doors, which takes place in the same general period and place, used her own personal experiences from growing up in the town, reference images, and the collaboration of historical experts and skilled craftsmen who provided the sets with a technical and artistic flair. Furthermore, the pre-existing historical locations provided a framework from which the production crew could start. Ling and Tarantino had both spent a large part of their lives in Los Angeles, and so had a familiarity not only with the old appearances of certain parts of the city, but an awareness of how the terrain had changed over time as well. This would prove to be a great advantage, since the relocation, destruction, refurbishment, and refusal of use of particular businesses, buildings, and locations meant that some creative liberties would need to be taken with respect to the accuracy of the sets. But these artistic changes were all done within the realm of, and with a goal towards, if not exact duplication, then at least an interpretation based most strongly on the nostalgic versions of memories within the creative director's minds. In so doing, what is left is not a sharp focused, pedantically decorated and cramped image of the Los Angeles of the late 1960s, but instead the rose-tinted and lens-flared afterimage of the past projected like an 8mm home movie direct into the retina of the viewer. Too much focus has been paid to the microscopic blink-and-you'll-miss-it props and details and quirks of architecture that make up the most impressive feat of this particular production, the 4 blocks of Hollywood Boulevard, which were completely redressed for an extended driving sequence in the movie. The true artistic merit of this set's use in any of its scenes can be found in the careful orchestration of the many disparate, tiny, and complex parts, which wholly and individually contribute to the fine-tuned impression of the blur of set dressings and retrofitted storefronts, meant to leave a mental image that is blurry and vague, but still complete in its evocation of its time and mood. Another example which may better illustrate and further elucidate this argument is the 1969 Taco Bell, which was created by reopening a closed-down, similarly constructed building and embellishing it, with the permission of Taco Bell, with all of the old signs and design details for just one quick shot. With such a short glimpse of the location, it is unlikely that the appreciation for the set's use in this scene is born out of an intimate knowledge of the setting's minutiae, or a familiarity with its accuracy to the real thing. It must be, then, that the ephemeral impact of seeing the restaurant in a flash like one would a memory of it is what lends the film its nostalgic edge, and it is doubtless that this was the conceit and intention of the production designer. In fact, one anecdote from Ling herself recounts the reaction of the 94-year-old owner of a donut shop, who had said that it looked just like it did when he opened it in 1955. The particular stretch of road recreated for the film was once populated with several cinemas, but since the time period depicted in the story, all had been closed and most renovated entirely, with the marquee normally the only vestige left, protected by its historical significance. It became the job of Ling and her crew, including set decorator Nancy Haig and supervising art director Richard L. Johnson, to restore the movie theaters and light up the marquees once again with the titles of classic films of the year 1969. This took months of preparation, the process requiring the combined efforts and collaboration of streets worth of merchants and property owners, as well as an extensive pre-visualization step in the pre-production period. Extra preparation was made so that the crew could quickly undo all that had been done to the set at the end of each shooting day. However, some of the re-beautification work became more permanent restorations of lost LA landmarks. An example being the James Dean mural of his character in Giant, which was painted on the side of a building in Glassell Park by famous Hollywood muralist Kent Twitchell, who specialized in film iconography. This is not the first nor the last instance of self-referential film intertextuality found in the design of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood either. As its story concerns mostly actors in the filmmaking sector of the Hollywood culture, Ling had to design not only 1960s sets, but sets of 1960s sets. The production team used a combination of what previously existed at a Universal Western town, and original contributions that either expanded or replaced lost parts of the set. This eclecticism allows for the iconographic registration of familiar Western entertainment from the period, while also at the same time changing it enough to keep things interesting. For one set in particular, which was intended to be filmed in black and white, it became necessary to paint over every building front so that they would appear better on the monochromatic film. The variable and disruptive paint allowed for more shades and variations, rather than just single large blank areas of solid gray. Interestingly enough, when it came time to secure a backlot set, the interruptions and unmanageable scale of a real backlot led to the design and creation of a backlot set for the production. To fill in the background, decorators added trucks, posters, movie props, and various other objects and equipment which would likely be found on the production lot at the time. To envision the design of the home of the main protagonist of the film, Barbara Ling looked at the character himself as a source of inspiration. She notes that he is modern but unsophisticated, and as such a person he maintains a simple layout with basic furniture. His character in the movie is also an actor, so it was decided that his walls would have his movie posters framed and hung upon them to reflect his occupation and as an implicit sign of his mild self-obsession and concern for his public identity. The home of the supporting character, a stuntman, is analogously informed by the qualities and associations of his role. To emphasize the contrast between his modest lifestyle and the mansion and pool which his television star friend owns, this character lives in a trailer. To further lend a bit of characterization to the location, the trailer is parked behind and beneath the giant screen of a drive-in movie theater, which connects to the way in which stuntmen are often left just out of the spotlight in favor of the actors which they double. Another larger set required for the film, an old movie ranch taken over by hippies, needed a menacing edge, so Ling sought out and ultimately found a property which had a central house which sat away and above all the rest of the ranch. The implication of this vantage point is that someone could always be watching. These commendable efforts made by the production design crew ultimately won the film an Oscar for Achievement in Production Design at the 92nd Annual Academy Awards. The use of personal experiences and memories to modify pre-existing historic locations lends the movie a realistic and timeless feel, while the detail of the sets burn an impression of the space without seeming cluttered or distracting. In a year of nominees which largely built sets from scratch, the creative as well as technical execution of Ling and her collaborators' set design using mainly pre-existing or foundational structures and architecture demonstrates that the most genuinely felt fiction is built around the rigid skeleton of fact. While it is still too soon to say whether or not the manner of this film's production has had any influence on other productions taking up like-minded practices of restoration and outbuilding, it is undoubtedly a step in the right direction, and a service to the cause of restoration and optimum set-building utility.
You don't know what's going on. You've been away for much too long.
Old Chattanooga. Still brewed at the Old Chattanooga Brewery at Kingston Pike and Old Chattanooga Road. So bring home a six-pack of Southern hospitality. Bring home a six-pack of Old Chattanooga beer. Old Chattanooga, the best beer this side of Texas.